Hi, I'm Ed Geraty, and I want to talk to you today about something called the deficiency story. So the deficiency story has to do with how the belief in a core deficient self drives so many of our actions and reactions when it comes to others. The deficiency story is like a false script, a fantasy, or maybe we should say a nightmare, about who we really are that we carry around from childhood into adulthood. The deficient self comes in many forms. The story could be about an unlovable self, a weak self, a powerless self, an inadequate or unacknowledged self, an abandoned self, an invalid or unimportant self, or some other version of the story, I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. The world around us practically runs on our story because we basically project our story out into the world around us, and we see whatever we're projecting. Again, the story is usually about something having to do with there is something wrong with me. Relationship has a built-in mirroring effect. As we move through life, other people appear to reflect back to us this core deficient self. When the deep wound that lies at the heart is triggered, we experience pain and suffering. This lie hurts, and it's responsible for much of the difficulty that we experience in relationships. If the pain gets too much, we may find ourselves trying to avoid it or blame others for it. We have a tendency to believe that others are the source of our discomfort. But others are really just a mirror showing us what we believe about ourselves. Here are some of the signs indicating that a deficiency story has been activated in your relationships. If you insist on being right and making others wrong, seeking love, praise, attention, and acknowledgement, or approval from others to the degree that it harms us. Comparing others to ourselves as better or worse. Belittling, ridiculing, or bullying others. Trying to control or manipulate. Judging others negatively or complaining about them. Expressing anger and other emotions in unhealthy, destructive ways. Maybe we just alienate ourselves and avoid relationships completely. Also, we might act on selfish ambition. It's all about me, me, me. We might suppress painful emotions and not express how we really feel. Or we might feel jealous or envious of others. Now, these are not all the signs and symptoms of the deficiency story, but these are oftentimes the most frequently identified. Much of this mind activity comes from being afraid to look directly at who we have falsely taken ourselves to be. The others in our lives are constantly mirroring this illusion of a core deficient self back to us. If you look, the mirroring effect is happening in every direction. Having a view of others as successful often mirrors back to us an unsuccessful self. When a loved one doesn't respond to you in the way you expect, or a romantic relationship ends, this often mirrors back an unlovable self. Attractive people may mirror back to us an unattractive self. People who appear in the world to be important may mirror back an unimportant self to us. When someone judges or criticizes you, this may mirror back a self that feels wrong. When others appear arrogant or authoritative, this may reflect a weak, insignificant, or small self. And if others appear powerful, you may feel less powerful or powerless. And it's not just other people. Anything can reflect deficiency back to you. A drug addiction, problems with money, those all mirror back a self that is lacking. Past events may reflect that you are currently a victim. Future things like enlightenment, recovery, and self-improvement may point back to a self that feels presently incomplete. And it's not always just a simple play of opposites. The outer circumstances in your life, no matter what they are, generally reflect something back about how you view your inner self. If outer circumstances appear inadequate, you may also experience yourself as inadequate. The point is that the inner and the outer are really one, no matter how you slice it. Whatever seems to appear out there reflects in some way what appears in here, in the self-identity. In its most basic sense, pointing outward at others through the mirror of relationship means looking to people and things outside yourself for your own self-esteem. This focuses mainly on the negative self-identities that seem to keep us from experiencing genuine happiness. When we believe that true, stable, permanent happiness is dependent upon other people or the outer circumstances of our lives, we really set ourselves up. We are deriving our self-esteem largely through the mirror of relationship. If one's positive view of yourself is based on comparing yourself to others, and those people or outer circumstances happen to change for the worse, quite often the inner view of the self starts looking deficient again. One way to understand this is to consider that you are the main character in a play that you wrote. Maybe the name of the play is My Unlovable Self. Now, who are the characters you picked to act out the play with you? What parts have you assigned them? Is it your partner, your family, some friends or acquaintances? Think about those characters you've chosen. Again, you don't choose your family, but you do choose the degree and the way that you relate to them. So how do they all reflect back to you your own deficiency story, My Unlovable Self? Just think of a marquee on a movie theater. Notice the name on the marquee. It's your story. Is it a deficiency story? Identities based on mental stories and images are unstable. True self-esteem arises out of selfless presence, being in the present moment, without judging yourself or others. It has nothing to do with mental stories and images. It has nothing to do with defining yourself through the mirror of relationship. True self-esteem can't really be destroyed by the thoughts or actions of others. Take some time to think about the following questions and answer these questions honestly. What is your deficiency story or stories? In other words, is your story the unlovable self, the weak self, the powerless self, the abandoned self, etc., etc. Some version of I'm not good enough or there is something wrong with me. Where did this story come from? What early experiences helped to create the story that you now carry around? And ask yourself, how do you play this story out now in your life? And why do you continue to play out this story or false script? And the most important question to ask yourself, what would life be like if you gave up that deficiency story or changed the story? What if you changed it to a lovable self or a self that is currently okay? What would life be like? How would the actors in your story change? Or would you have to get new actors? So the deficiency story, which is usually unconscious in our lives, can really be examined. And you can look at the story that you're running. And you certainly can change that story. As a matter of fact, you're the only person that can change that story. So join me again, and we will have other talks about other mental health issues. Take care. Bye-bye.